Today's project is going to be stamp making, and we have two different kinds of stamps that we're going to make. You should have everything that you need inside the kit. You should have a stamp pad, a little baggie with a cork and some foam, a piece of cardstock that's folded. You'll have two different kinds of paint, a paintbrush, and then two pieces of cardboard. So we're going to do two different kinds of stamps. I'm going to move things out of the way here so we can get started with our first one, which is going to be the foam stamp. So for the foam stamp, you'll want to open up the plastic baggie that you have. You won't need the ink quite yet. And inside, you should have a cork with a small side and a bigger side, and then 3 pieces of foam. You'll only get to use one of these pieces in your final stamp, but it's good to practice so that you can get the look that you're going for. So for some samples that I made this mushroom stamp where I drew a mushroom on it, and I made a book stamp. And the way that you do it, the first thing is that you're going to want to take your cork and take that side that's a little bigger and place it on one of the foam pads. Using a pen, a ballpoint pen, you can trace around the cork. All right, and so you'll have a circle. Using your scissors, you can go ahead and cut the circle out. You won't need that extra foam, and it's okay if it's not a perfect circle, because this is really just gonna stick to your stamp. If you want, you can honestly not cut it out. It will just look more like this than fitting exactly on like my sample stamps did, but either way is fine. And if you want to make circles, you can cut circles with the other two as well. I'm gonna go ahead and just use the one I have for this example. So what you want to do is draw your shape on the foam. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a star. And so first I'm going to draw really lightly to make sure the star looks the way I want it to. And you can always practice on paper drawing your shape if that helps you. So that's kind of my star. And now that I know, I think I like the way that looks, I'm going to press really hard to make sure that all of the parts of the star get indented into the foam. And so you should see really thick black lines or whatever color pen you're using. And really you can keep going. You don't want to poke a hole in it, but you want it to be pretty deep, because the deeper it is, the more the shape will actually show up. So that looks pretty good to me. Got my star. You can kind of see how dark those lines are. It should show up pretty good. So I'm gonna take the glue. I'm using tacky glue for this because it's my favorite, but you might be able to do this with Elmer's glue as well, or even hot glue. You'll glue the side with the image facing down and put it right on there. If you wanted, you could do another shape on the other side, so you have two-sided. I'm just gonna stick with the one for this. So I'm not gonna need those foam. I'm gonna let this dry. And while that dries, we can go over the second stamp. So for the next one, it's a cardboard stamp, and you're gonna need 2 pieces of cardboard for this. The end result will look something like this one. There's already paint on this, so you can't quite see what it looked like, but one of the pieces of cardboard will be the back, and then one of the pieces of cardboard will be the shape. This is a leaf. So for this one, I recommend getting a pencil to sketch. I'm gonna go ahead and make the moon. I'll make the moon this time. And I'm gonna do a crescent moon because I know that that way it will be hopefully pretty easy to cut out. So I'm sketching what I want. Doesn't quite look right to me. I'm gonna fix that. Looks a little too oval. And it's okay, however it looks. You can go up to the edge, it doesn't matter, because in the end, you're going to cut this shape out and put it on the other piece of cardboard. Now that kind of looks right. Well, that will work for me. Now I'm going to take a Sharpie, just because I have so many pencil marks, and I'm going to go ahead and go over what I drew so that I know what I'm going to cut out. And you can do scratchy lines like I'm doing, or however works for you. Eventually you're going to just cut it. So then I'll cut out my shape. Great. And this part is looking a little, I'm actually going to go against my line that I drew and try and make it a little bolder. There. All right. Now that looks pretty good. You might think about trimming a little bit. It'll look enough like a moon, I think, for me. All right. Now this is the part where you're going to think about how it's going to be mirror image, right? So this leaf, when it prints the other way. So think about that as you're creating your stamp. It's a little different than the other way, which you'd also want to draw mirror image, but because I drew books or mushrooms, they're kind of symmetrical shapes, so they're a little easier. But when it's something like this, you're actually going to want to flip it. The opposite of how you want it to look, because when this goes down, it's going to go that side. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the side that I drew on, because that kind of shows me the way that I want it to go. So I'm going to use that tacky glue again. You can use whatever glue works for you. And I'm going to glue it to the backing here. Might need more glue, but that should probably work. Great, and I'm going to let that dry. All right, and now we can go back to the star. So in your kit, you have these cardstock things. You can go ahead and make a card with this. It's kind of fun to use your stamp to make an art project, or you can just use this as sample paper. I'm going to go ahead and try and do some stars here in the inside. So for the two things that you have in your kit, you have the paint and you have the stamp pad. So the cardboard stamp won't work on this tiny pad, but the foam stamps will. And so you only want to use the foam with this pad, because otherwise it's not going to show the shape that you've got with the cardboard. And so this is the moment of truth. I'm going to dab it on. Ooh, this looks a little sparkly. Let's see. Ooh, you can see that part of my stamp didn't quite take. The harder you press, the more it will show. I think some of my glue is still drying, but it's still kind of looking nice. I can do other stars. Now, as you can see, there's a circle around whatever it is that I make, because this is indented into this, unlike the moon, which will have nothing around it because it's just the moon. But I think it looks kind of nice to try. In case you're curious about the other ones, let's try this book. Ooh, that's nice and bold. Or the little mushroom. Wow. Part of that didn't quite show up, but that's kind of what this stamp is like. And you can use the stamps to decorate, as I said, or make a card, or just use this as your practice. Fun to get other colors if you have them. Now this one, let's see, it looks like it's pretty dry now. I'll flip this over so I can use that half. So for this, because it won't take the ink on the pad, it will just not work. I'm gonna actually go ahead and paint on my moon, and now I feel good about choosing yellow. All right. You don't have to paint this nicely. Sometimes people will just make a puddle and stamp it in there, but I'm just doing this to make it extra clean. extra stamps. All right, that seems pretty good to me. And now I want to see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and do a test. Now you want to press down to make sure that it touches that surface, and we'll see how it turns out. Oh. Ooh, see, I could have used more paint. It didn't quite show up as much. So I'm gonna go ahead and do lots of paint this time. Extra goopy paint. This is why some people will just dip it right in paint. You can pour this out on a surface that you don't mind having paint on and dip your stamp in the paint like it was an ink pad. I'm just gonna make sure it gets a lot of that paint. Okay. Let's see the moment of truth. I might take a fist to put it down. All right, that's a lot bolder, and because there kind of was a little bit of paint on the bottom there, that's why I like to paint on, because then I can sort of control that, but hey, that's okay. Still looks mostly moon-like. So those are the two kinds of stamps. You can see some samples of what my leaf looked like when I stamped it with green. You can use other colors if you have other paints at home. Just if you're gonna use a different stamp pad, make sure to wipe that down so that it doesn't mix the colors, or you might have a color that you didn't intend. But those are the two kinds of stamps. You've got your foam and your cardboard.